Folks, welcome back to another episode of Mayhem in the Midsouth. Our episode today, Bad Man in Bayou Blue. And folks, the fellow we're talking about today was a serial killer that operated in Louisiana, and the majority of the time the southwest part of the state. Now, there was about 5 parishes that he did his business in for the most part. And there, as the authorities can figure, he operated for right around 10 years, so he had a decade of killing under his belt. Now, he claims to have murdered 23 people during this spree before he was captured. Now, for the most part, I guess you could narrow down, according to authorities, 4 parishes in particular: Trebonne Parish, Lafourche, Iberville, and Jefferson. Now, of course, 2 of those parishes are right there in or around New Orleans. The murders are going to begin July 1997. His first victim picks the fellow up while he's hitchhiking. Now, his general MO was to either attack the victim from behind with a blunt object, or he promised them sex with a female, the one consideration being that the victim would need to let the suspect tie him up, because this unknown female was shy about such things, or was kinky and liked to have the fella tied up, which didn't make a whole lot of sense, but to each his own. In any event, the victim number 1 was found in a ditch on July the 14th, 1997. Now, that was one of his favorite dumping spots, was ditches along roads and highways. Now, this ditch was near a wooded area there in St. Charles Parish. His body was found 2 days after he had turned up missing. Now, the medical examiner would later say that the victim had water in his lungs, which means when he was dumped in that ditch, he was still alive enough to swallow some water. And at first, authorities thought he had just fallen into the ditch and drowned, but it didn't take long for them to figure out that that was not the case. Now, the killer would strike again in December of 97. He strangled a young fella. Now, another one of the suspect's ploys was to promise drugs to these individuals. Now, a lot of these individuals are either homeless or down on their luck. And this victim was found just a few days later as well. Now, July 31st of 98, he strikes again, and he's still in St. Charles Parish. And this fella here was a homeless individual. Now, there were indications that this victim had been at some point tied up. There were marks on his wrist. Now, about 3 months later, he strikes again, October 1998. That young man was beaten and strangled. Now, that fella, his body was found on the outskirts of Metairie on October 4th. Now, authorities did recover semen from the body. Now, at this point, authorities still hadn't gotten around to deciding that they've got a serial killer. So all the victims lived a lifestyle that led to a higher rate of death by violent means. So October of 98 runs into a juvenile there in the town of Kenner. Now, he promised this young man some crack cocaine. He beats the young man with a blunt object, strangles him. A month after that, another victim. Pretty well the same MO, at least according to what the killer would confess to later. Promise of drugs, get him inside his vehicle, strike him with a blunt object, and strangle him. On May of '99, he's still in the area around Kenner. Comes across another fella, another offer of drugs. Gets him in the truck, blunt object to the head, strangulation. Now this body would be found in a dumpster in the city's industrial area. Now this body was found about a mile from where the previous victim's body had been found. In this body there was also semen found on the victim. Now he'd wait about 30 days. Our killer would strike again. Another homeless man with a sad past and a drug issue. Now he again tried to dump this body in a dumpster, and he couldn't find a dumpster that wasn't already full to the brim. So he dropped this victim off just on the side of the street. Now the coroner in this case would conclude that the victim had been tied up with a rope. Now the police there in the jurisdiction are looking, and they got 3 victims that all knew each other and all lived very close in proximity to each other. So now the police are starting to get suspicious. There's also, you're starting to develop a pattern here in MO. So it's late August, '99. Meets a fella, offers him drugs, takes him to a wooded area out near the town of Metairie, tied him up, raped him and strangled him. That victim's body would be found a month later. In January of 2000, he strikes again in LaFourche Parish. Now in October, he gets another fella. He gets him into his trailer. He's living in a trailer there in town. Gets him there saying there's a girl that wants to have sexual relations with him. So he hits him with a blunt object, strangles him. That body is found on October the 6th of 2000. Now October 12, 2002, meets another fella there on the streets of Houma. Hits him with a blunt object, ties him up, rapes the victim, strangles him. Now this body is found on the highway overpass. The victim's found just a few hours after the attack. Now in late 2002, our suspect and his sister, they moved to a little community known as Bayou Blue. Now he's working a job that allows him to travel around the area. So he runs across another young man, attacks him, strikes him in the head, kills him, takes the victim and the victim's bicycle and dumps him into a reed field. Now that body would not be found for over a year. Now the coroner, he figured cause of death was asphyxiation, but they weren't sure because of the condition of the body. October 2004, he gets another fella. Allegedly promised him drugs. Now this victim was raped, strangled, body was dumped. Now this time he took the body almost 20 miles away from where he had done the killing. Now it was a while before anybody listed this victim here as missing because he was homeless, which is what the suspect was doing. He was hitting those people that society had spurned or ignored. Now they later identified this victim through fingerprints. And this is all in the same month. Attacks the victim, kills him, strangles him. His body is found on October 24th of 2004. February 2005, murders another fella who was homeless. Now this fella had actually associated with 2 other victims of our killer. In fact, police had actually looked at this victim as a potential suspect. That is until they find him dead, with a similar M.O. Now, April 2005, he strikes again, another homeless man. Got him into his truck with the promise he'd give him a place to sleep for the night. He tied him up, raped him, and then strangled the victim. Now, it's finally after the death of this victim here that the police are really leaning towards we got a serial killer. That area they're looking at is around Kenner and Houma. And what they're looking at is the M.O. of all these killings are very similar. Now, it's about this time they contact the FBI, and the FBI gets involved. So now it's the summer of 2005, and he strikes again. Kills a fella, and then strikes again there during the summer, another fella in St. Charles Parish. And then he gets another one there in the summertime. This fella's in Trebon Parish. In both cases, it's a promise of sexual relations with a female. Now, these last two victims, unlike all the other victims, they didn't have a criminal history and they weren't known to use drugs. Now, part of the problem too with these killings is you've got them occur in different parishes, and it's this age-old problem that police don't always communicate like they should, or maybe they do and they just miss the information. Now, that last victim, our killer, he changed up his pattern a little bit. He threw him in a canal. Now it's September 2005, and he kills another fella. Now, this fella's hitchhiking out of Napoleonville. And this is following the Hurricane Katrina. Now, his body's found in a reed field. But now it takes a while. It's several months, and the body's in pretty bad shape. Now, late November of 2005, and he kills another fella in LaForge Parish. Now, for quite a while, they thought this was a drug-related killing because the relatives of the victim said that the victim owed a local drug dealer money. So the police are looking at it from that angle for quite a long time. Now, the last confirmed victim, summer of 2006. Now, this was somebody that the suspect was actually hanging out with. Now, they were in Iberville Parish, and as per usual with the suspect, he struck the victim with a blunt object, dumps the body. Now, in this case, however, you had witnesses that saw the victim get into a black SUV, and they described the man. Unfortunately, they didn't describe him very well because they didn't really take that much notice. Now, November 2006, the police finally began to look at the suspect. Now, this is when a potential victim had went to the police there in Bayou Blue and said that he'd went to this fella's trailer, our suspect, and that suspect had offered him drugs and told him that he could have sex with a female. And then he did his old story about, but this girl, she wants you to be tied up before she'll have sex with you. Well, he kind of got suspicious of that, and he took off out of the trailer. Now, at first, police didn't believe him because he did have a drug history. Now, while he's in the station, the suspect, because the police say, well, we'll bring him in and talk to him, it ain't going to hurt. They bring him in and talk to him. While they got him in there, they say, why don't you give us a little blood sample? So he lets them do it. The next week, that blood is sent in for DNA testing. Now, it matches semen samples that had been recovered from 2 of the victims. So December 1st, 2006, the suspect is arrested. Now once they get him in there, he starts confessing. Now he confessed to 23 murders. Now, allegedly, according to what the police are saying, he gave them details of each of the killings that only the killer would know, because of course at any time you have a murder case, police are not going to release all of the information. They have to hold something back, so that way if they get somebody coming in, like in this case, and they're confessing, they have to know the person knows this because he did it, not because he read it in the paper. So he is later taken to trial, and he's convicted, and he went to prison there in the great state of Louisiana.